Okay, this is cin2003 DHCP, week 3. We will study deploying and configuring DHCP. What is DHCP? How you design the infrastructure? What is the server for DHCP? And what is the relay agent? The function of DHCP, it will automatically configure the IP address, okay, from a pool of addresses. And I will explain this in the lab. I will show you how to do this in the lab. The pool is called a scope. Why is it used? Because it will save you time. You don't need to go to each computer and configure IP address. And also it prevents configuration errors or duplication. DHCP has 3 components. I remember this came in one of the questions. What are the 3 components of DHCP? So we have DHCP server application. This responds to client requests. We have DHCP client, is the PC. And we have the communication or DHCP communication protocol. How they talk to each other, the client and server. We have 3 different IP allocation methods performed by DHCP. The first one is dynamic allocation. So here the DHCP assigned the IP address to a client computer from the scope or from the pool for a certain amount of time. We call it lease period. Okay. Then we have also automatic allocation. The DHCP server permanently assigns an IP address to a client computer from the scope. So it is essentially a dynamic, but with indefinite lease time. Okay, so that's the difference between dynamic and automatic. Then we have the manual allocation. The DHCP server permanently assigns a specified IP address to a specific computer in the network, and this is called a reservation. You use manually allocated address for computers that must have the same IP address all the time. Maybe like your Exchange server, your web server, like that. Okay. Yes. Unlimited this time. Now, vendor information extensions. We have subnet mask. It specifies which bit of the IP address identify the host system and which bits identify the network. We have router. It will assign it will give you here. You will give the IP address of the router or your gateway, and then you give the DNS, the domain name server, that is used for DNS name resolution. Then you have the host name and the domain name. We will do this in the lab, so you will learn more about these things. And we have a full chapter on DNS also. Now, when a client requests an IP address, we call this negotiation with the server. So he requests, there's some negotiation happening, some messages. So there is requested IP address. It is used by the client to request a particular IP address. Then you have the IP address lease time. It specifies the duration of the dynamically assigned IP address. Then you have the server identifier. It specifies the IP address of the DHCP server involved. Okay? When you want to send a unicast. What is the meaning of unicast? Unicast means computer to computer. Multicast, computer to a group of computers. Broadcast, from the computer to all the computers. We have also parameter request list. We have then the message here carrying an error message from the server to the client in the form of DHCP and AK, and a negative acknowledgement. Then we have the renewal T1 time. Okay. Then this is when T1 when is 50% of the time is gone. Yani if you have the lease for 100 days, if it reaches 50 days, then T1. If it reaches 85 days, then it is T2, yani 85% of the time. When it is T1, it is called the renewing state. If it is T2, khalas, rebinding. You need to find the server, this server, another server. Okay. So how does the renewal happen? Okay. This is the explanation in wording. When you reach 50%, it is T1. Okay. Can you see it? It's on your computer. T1. You are in the renewing state. So the PC will request or generate DHCP request message. Okay. As a unicast to the DHCP server. Okay. By the way, each time you restart your computer, it is renewing its lease time as well. Okay. If the server does not respond, when you reach 87.5%, T2 is 87.5 to be accurate. Okay. Then you are in which state? Rebinding. Remember, we said rebinding. Okay, يعني مرحلة الخطر. The client enters the rebinding state and begins transmitting DHCP request as a broadcast, sending to all the DHCP servers. Please, anybody can help me? Okay. If the server receives DHCP request message from a client, it can respond with either acknowledge to approve the lease or negative acknowledge, okay, which terminates the lease. If the client receives no response by the time the lease expires, or if it receives a negative acknowledge, the client releases its IP address and returns to the initial state. Okay. All TCP IP communication then ceases. And if you have internet access, it will be disabled because you don't have internet. You will not have access to the network. Okay. Only they can send the DHCP request broadcast, the DHCP discover broadcast. We have a diagram. We'll see it in the next slides that will show you this. So we talked about different message formats or types, different message types. The DHCP discover. When you want to request information parameters from your DHCP server. We have DHCP offer, the server to offer IP address to the client. We have DHCP request by the client to accept or renew an IP address. And we have acknowledge, DHCP acknowledge, used by server to acknowledge the client's acceptance of an offered IP address. Any questions? We have also DHCP decline, used by clients to reject an offered IP address, and negative acknowledgement used by server to reject a client acceptance. Also, you have DHCP release by the client to terminate an IP address lease. There is even a command to release the IP address. And then we have DHCP inform. It's used by clients to obtain additional TCP IP configuration parameters from a server. You need to know these message types. So this is the chart, what I have just explained here. Okay, the renewal is written in a diagram. Some people, they like flow chart, So you start, the client will send a broadcast, the DHCP discover, and then the server receive the broadcast, and then the server will send the offer, the IP address, and then the client will accept, okay, like that. Any questions? And this is the renewal. Okay, this is the renewal. So here in the renewal, remember we said we have T1. T1 is what? Which state? renewal state, 50%. And the 87 T2 is 87.5%, and it is called rebinding state. طيب, the DHCP infrastructure. By theory, DHCP Server 2019 is capable of supporting thousands and thousands of clients. Okay? But in practical and in virtual also, you need to have more than one server for many reasons. For efficiency of your network, redundancy, okay, traffic control. DHCP relies on broadcast message which have limitations. What is the problem with the broadcast when you send to everybody?
Too much
traffic. Yeah, very good. So you want to minimize this broadcast. So we have different type of infrastructure. Actually, we have three. The first one is called distributed. And distributed, you have a DHCP server in each segment of the network. Okay. So the advantages is your client have ready access to their DHCP server. I am here. You do not have to worry about DHCP traffic. Yani like I am this room, I have my DHCP server. In the other network, I have DHCP. So everyone is getting from their dedicated DHCP server. The potential disadvantage is that what is the potential disadvantage you think? You need so many. It will cost more work. Okay? Especially also if you want to have not only one DHCP server, two for redundancy. In case one failed, the other one will work. This is how it look like. Okay, here we have router. So here I have one network, DHCP. Here I have another network, DHCP. Another network, DHCP. By the way, question. Broadcast, does it bypass the router? Yani router, does it bypass the broadcast? How many broadcasts we have here? 3, very good. Because we have router. Okay, so this is distributed. The second method is centralized DHCP server. Yeah, this I think you can tell from the name, which means that we have how many servers? We have dedicated DHCP server that will serve the whole network. Okay. All right. And then you will have a DHCP relay agent in each subnet or in each segment, so that it is the software component that will deal with the DHCP central server. Okay, that's why we call it DHCP relay agent. Okay. Okay, the advantage is, of course, what? Less administration work and cheaper. Okay, the disadvantage is اللي هو حكينا الترافيك, because all the traffic will be going back and forth to the DHCP server الأصلي. Okay. So we have one extreme centralized, we have another extreme distributed. You combine both worlds and they are called hybrid. So in the hybrid, it is a mixture of centralized and relay and distributed. Okay. This is a centralized. Okay. You see the centralized, where is the DHCP server? On one corner here. And then in each segment, what do we have? Relay agent, the software. So you have to, when you design your DHCP, you need to make sure that you regulate the traffic. You make the traffic efficient, such as place your DHCP server close to the client. And if I am here, my DHCP server should be at least close to my building. You know, I don't put it in another campus. Traffic, okay. Especially also, and if you are leasing the traffic, and it will cost you money and time and efficiency, and okay. Also increase the lease duration as much as you can if they allow you. يعني duration خليها مثلا 8 days. By default it's 8 days. Maybe you need it 100 days or 10 days, 12 days. Okay, according to your needs and security. Or sometimes you need to make the lease duration unlimited. I will show you exactly what is the lease. We'll show you. Any questions? The DHCP server, how do we install it? It is actually coming with the server. When you install the server, it is packaged inside, but you need to add the role. Add role, Windows Server. Add the role, which is DHCP, and we will do it. Then you install the role, okay, and then you configure it. Then you configure the scope. Scope is the pool, okay? So the scope is a range of IP addresses on a particular subnet. So on the server, I could have more than one scope because I have different subnets, okay? So you create a scope using the DHCP snap-in for Microsoft Management Console MMC. This is how we install it in the lab, inshallah, when we do the lab. So here we have the console. When you add the role, then you go to tools and you click DHCP, then you will get this menu, this screen. You see in the left you have DHCP. It will ask you for the scope name, description. Description is optional, but the scope name, you should give it a name. Okay? And give it a name that is useful, that is meaningful, if you like. Then you create the scope, you identify the scope or the range starting to the end. Okay? And then the length of the subnet. Yeah, you know subnet mask, you have studied this in a previous course. So you need to know this scope is class C, class B. So let's say it's class C. So what will be the length of your mask, subnet mask? 8. If it's class C, 8 bits. So what will be my subnet mask? 255.255.255.0. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I made a mistake. It will be, it's correct, 255.255.255.0. But the length, it will be 24. Okay? Yeah. The host will be 8 bits, but here they are talking about the network size. Okay? We'll do it in the lab, inshallah. Don't worry. Okay, so then after you create the pool, you will add the exclusion. You want to exclude some IP addresses because you want to give them to other important computers or servers. So you will put your exclusion from, let's say, 1 to 10 or 1 to 50. Okay. And next, then it will ask you for the duration. Now, if you maximize this photo, this picture here, it is 8 days. The default is 8 days. Okay. Then we have configure the DHCP option page in the DHCP console. All right. So you want to configure these options or not, like the gateway, the router, and the extra information. Okay. If you say yes, then you need to give the router IP address or your gateway. Yani for example, if I come here in this diagram, here, where is my gateway for this network, Shabab? Where is my gateway? It is the router interface here. Okay. So that's the meaning of router or gateway. So we go back. Then it will ask you about what is your DNS server. What's your parent domain? Okay. And what's the IP address of your DNS? Okay. It will ask you, do you want to activate the scope now? If we want to use it, yes, we need to activate it. In the lab, we need to activate it. Okay. Next, you need to configure the options which are scope options. It is supplied only to the DHCP client receiving address. And you have server options supplied to all DHCP client receiving addresses from the server. So these are the configuration options. Here are they here. If you look here. All right. What is the reservation? Reservation is a manually allocated IP address. Okay. Yes, exactly. If you see the second line, it is used for computers whose IP address must remain the same or static, such as DNS, Active Directory, domain controller, Internet web server. Okay. Someone might ask you, okay, why you do it through your IP, through your DHCP? Why don't you do it just manually? For simplicity, because I want to use DHCP for all my configurations. So I will do it through DHCP. Although it's a static, but I'll do it through my DHCP. So this is how we create a reservation. And you see here with the reservation, you need to give a MAC address of the device. Okay. Deploying a DHCP relay agent. When is the relay agent needed? In which infrastructure? In centralized or in hybrid? Okay. By the way, many routers these days, they are capable of functioning as DHCP relay agent. Okay. If they cannot, you can configure your Windows server to function as a relay agent also. Please read the summary. Then we will stop for a short break. Anybody? Okay, anybody? I didn't take his name for the attendance.